Hello again and welcome back to the ZGuy programming channel, Python edition. Today's topic, loan calculation part 2. I want to encourage those of you who skipped part 1 and jumped right into part 2 to go back and watch part 1. The reason for that is this part 2 is a continuation of what we did in the part 1 video, and the portions of the program that are the same, I'm not going to discuss those. We're only going to talk about the enhancements to the addition to the first program. So I really encourage you to go back. It's only about 10 minutes. Go back, watch the first video before you jump into this one, so that some of the things at the very beginning of the program in particular make some sense to you. All right, and with that, let's jump in and get started on enhancements to our loan calculation application. Okay, we're back into our loan calculator. The very first part of this program where we accept user input and calculate our interest rate, our monthly interest rate, as well as calculating of our monthly payment is identical to the previous program. So now we're not going to talk about any of that setup there. We do have two new variables defined here, and we'll get into what they're being used for a little bit later, but we're defining two new variables, sum interest and sum principal, setting those to 0. Then the next change that we're going to make is we're going to actually print column headings. Last time we just said, month, space, payment space, interest space. We're going to use the formatting codes \n for new line and \tab to set these apart at known spacing on the screen by using the tab. I think the tab is every 8 characters on the screen, so this allows us to set those columns up neatly with more than just a space between them. Now once we get into the for loop where we do the monthly calculations and display that information, one of the changes that we're making in our program here is, if you recall in the first video, every time we did a calculation of monthly principal, monthly interest payment, and balance, we used a little math to get rid of the decimal places after the second decimal. Okay, we basically just chopped them off and displayed 2 decimals to the user. We're going to do that a little bit differently this time, so that's code that you're not going to see here that you saw in the previous video. We also made a couple changes here with just a different syntax, just so that you get used to seeing something different. Sum int plus equal monthly interest payment. It's just like saying sum int equals sum int plus monthly interest payment. It's a shorthand version. They mean the same thing, but again, just for the sake of getting you used to seeing different types of code, that's what we did with that there. Now, again, we did define those sum int and sum principal. Basically, what we're doing here is every month we're going to keep a running total of accumulated interest that we've paid and accumulated principal that we've paid. And then we're going to display that to the user a little later. Okay, here's our print statement that's going to display that row of information for every month of our loan calculation. And we use our print formatting here, so we're going to display a decimal, %3D, then we're going to tab to the next column. We're going to display a floating point number, tab, floating point number, tab, floating point number, tab, floating point number. And these .2fs, the F indicates floating point and the .2 indicates how many decimal places we want to display. All right, and then we're going to display X goes to the integer parameter, monthly payment. Now this is new here. We're going to use a function called round. Okay, so rounding. Okay, if the next digit is 5 or greater than the previous digit, gets rounded up to the next value, correct? So the round function takes 2 parameters. What's the variable that we're going to do the rounding on, and how many decimal places do we want to round to? Okay, so we've got the monthly payment, monthly interest payment, monthly principal, and balance. All those are getting rounded to 2 decimal places. Now notice the other thing we got here is we don't have all these extra variables. You meant monthly payment display, monthly interest payment display. All of those were done away with. We actually just do the rounding right here in the print statement. You could, if you wanted to, still have all those variables and set them equal to round monthly payment to, and then use those variables in here with, say, with these same formatting parameters. Up to you how you want to do it. Again, there's many ways to develop and design a program. This is just one of them. You might notice this character here, this little backslash. This is what allows us to continue a line, continue a statement on the next line. Okay, if you didn't put this backslash here, Python would think you're done with the print statement, and it would give you an error because a comma is not how you end a line, and the next line doesn't have a command in front of it, so it doesn't know what to do with it. The backslash allows you to do line continuation. Okay, this next piece of code is going to introduce a new operator, and the function of this code is to show the user at the end of each year, of each 12 months period, how much interest and principal they've paid cumulatively to that point, and to tell them what year they've just completed paying. And the new operator we're looking at here is this percent sign called the modulus operator, modulo. And the function of that is it's kind of like a division. Okay, so we're going to take x divided by 12. And what happens is that the modulo operator, so let's say x was 12. Okay, 12 divided by 12 is 1, and there's no remainder, right? It's division that just results in 1.0 as your result. Well, if you used x of 13 and did 13 divided by 12, you'd have a result of 1 with a remainder of 1. Okay, so the modulo operator tells us what the remainder is after this division is done. How much is remaining? Okay. What we're trying to do here is we want to know when we hit the end of every 12-month cycle. So if we take x, which is our month that we're operating on, and divide by 12, after every year is complete, we should end up with a remainder of 0. Right? At the end of 12 months, 12 divided by 12 is 1, remainder 0. At the end of 24 months, 24 divided by 12 is 2, remainder 0. So every month we do this calculation, and I check. Is it end of year? Well, we'll know it's the end of a year if our remainder is 0. Okay? So then we calculate what year are we in. Take x, whatever month we're currently finishing up here, divided by 12, and that will give us our year. Then we print, we do a couple of new lines to generate a blank space on the screen. Display end of year, %d, we're going to use a decimal here, another new line, and then we display the year, which gets put into the placeholder by the %d here. Now, don't get confused. We've got a % here and we got a % here. They are totally different functions. Okay, you've got to look at those in context of the way they're being used. And then we do a print. We tab in a little bit. And we say you have paid a floating point number and interest, and a floating point number with 2 decimal places of principal. Another new line, continuation character, and we do a round of the summation of interest and a round of the summation of the principal, and that gets displayed. We will loop through our for loop here as many times as we have in our loan term, and display one line here for every month, and then at the end of each year, again, we'll display some status information on the loan. The final thing we're going to do is once the looping is complete, we've gone through however many months our loan is set up for, we're going to look to see if our end of year was not zero. Okay, now remember, we calculate this end of year as our current month we operating on divided by 12, and we're looking for this remainder of zero to tell us when we've completed a year. Well, once we drop out of this loop, what if we don't have a loan that's a multiple of 12 months? Okay, a 3-year loan is 36 months. What if this loan is odd and it's for 3.5 years? So that would be 42 months. Well, it would be nice if our program was smart enough to say you've paid years 1, 2, and 3, but then you got 6 months at the final part of your loan. I wanted to be able to display a message that says end of partial year and tell them what year you partially paid for. So on a 46-month loan, that would be a partial year 4, and give them the interest and principal up to that point. So again, we just want to look for an end of year, a remainder that was calculated and came out to be non-zero. If it's non-zero, then we know we have a partial year that we need to display updated information for. And then finally we go down here and print end of loan statement. Alright, so let's go ahead and save this as loan2.py. Run it, Python loan2.py. Let's go ahead and use the same numbers we used before. $5,000 loan, 36 months, 5%. And scroll back to the top. We got our column headings nicely lined up with our values now. Your payment, your interest, your principal. As you know, as you pay your loan off, your interest payment, the portion of your payment, your $149, decreases, the interest portion of it decreases, and your principal portion increases during the life of the loan, and your balance obviously decreases. So here we go, end of 12 months, end of year, you've paid $214 in interest, $1,584 in principal. Go through year 2, year 3. All right, now let's do this 46 month just to make sure our logic works. 46 months, 5%. Year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. I'm sorry, not 46 months. I did that wrong. 42 months is 3.5 year loan. My bad. But nonetheless, 46 is a partial year. That's 3 years and 10 months. And we get our end of partial year 4 and our total interest and principal paid. I hope you've enjoyed this mini application we've developed, and I hope you're finding what you're learning through these videos to be useful. I really enjoy putting them together, and if you have any ideas for future videos, please feel free to let me know.